Thank you all for being here. I know y'all have a lot of choices on what y'all are attending, so I really appreciate all of y'all's presence here. That's awesome. Like she said, this is Do More with Less, Forms and Workflow, 2,070 hours saved. Just for my own benefit, got a quick question. How many people in here are currently utilizing Forms and Workflow for any kind of business process? Okay, so a majority of you. The rest of y'all are, I hope, trying to begin using it or trying to get ideas. Is that where everyone's at? Okay, great. I've been there. So you can definitely do it. You're in the right place. We're going to get into some workflow and process modeler stuff. So for those that have used it, hopefully this will be beneficial to you. Just quick overview of what we're going to do. Quick introduction of the College of Engineering at Texas A&M. Then we're going to look at the problems we faced with such a bold initiative that we're trying to accomplish. Then we'll go into the solutions we've come up with to handle those problems. And I'm sure since you're at Empower, you can guess what that solution is going to be. We'll then go into two different processes that we've re-engineered, and they take a different look at ways to do form approvals. And so we'll definitely do that. Then we'll briefly discuss how we do project selection at the College of Engineering, and also discuss return on investment. And then we'll wrap it up with what we're looking forward to trying to accomplish in the future. So, Texas A&M University is located in College Station, Texas. It's about an hour's drive north of Houston. There's currently, I think, 60-ish thousand students on campus, with 25% of them being engineering students. We're the largest college on campus with 25% of those students. We have over 2,600 faculty and staff, and 14 degree granting departments, and 30 research centers, which are located from obviously College Station to Qatar to Brazil. All around the world we have a presence. 2 years ago, as it was mentioned, our dean, Kathy Banks, set in motion an initiative to increase our enrollment to 25,000 students by the year 2025. We were at about 12,000 when we started that. So you can see we're a little ways into it with 15,000 enrolled students right now, and I think that's going well. But we quickly realized that we were not going to be able to support that kind of growth without taking some bold steps with some of our processes. Obviously, doubling the enrollment of students did not mean that we were going to get the resources to double the staff, so we had to come up with ways to handle those problems. So the problems we faced and needed to address, we had a number of confusing and outdated forms. And by confusing, I mean, I don't know how many of y'all have filled out paper forms before, and you'll say, well, what fields on here do I need to fill out? And they'll highlight 2 or 3 of them and say, oh, but you can skip the rest. Well, we feel that that's a burden to the people that are filling them out. I don't think you should ask the question if you don't need the answer. And so we wanted to address that. We had a lot of forms that hadn't even been looked at in 10 plus years. Time goes on, no one ever considers, could that be better? And so we wanted to update those. We had inefficient approval processes. We would have students dropping off forms into folders on advisors' desks that needed department head signatures. The form might sit on that desk for a week before someone would finally move it to the department head's desk, and if they're in the office, they'll get to it. If not, well, it'll wait till they return. And then we had overflowing filing cabinets. All those documents have to go somewhere, and so they're going to go into filing cabinets where they might be able to be found eventually, but probably not. And the cost of keeping filing cabinets is pretty significant. I think there was a study that suggested it's over $2,000 a year to store documents in a 4-drawer filing cabinet. So that was some potential savings we might see if we could fix that problem. So the solution we set out to accomplish, we wanted to digitize our paper-based processes. We wanted to streamline the approvals, and by that I mean keep those digital as well. We didn't want to have people printing out the documents, signing them, scanning them. We wanted to keep it all digital. We were going to reduce that filing cabinet footprint. Same thing, keep the documents digital, keep people from printing them out. So we ended up with Laserfiche, which I very much enjoy working with the product, and y'all must too, because you're here. Our Laserfiche installation is managed by our shared service, which is the Greater Centralized IT Group at Texas A&M. I work for the college's IT group, and then there's the bigger IT group. They manage all of the database administration, the backups of the servers, the updates to all of those, which leaves me free to interact with my customers to develop solutions that are meaningful to them, that they will see real time savings and money savings with those solutions. It allows me to be more intimate with their problems. So the first process we tackled was our onboarding process. Just because we don't have the resources to double our staff doesn't mean we're not going to hire more people. We're going to hire a lot more people. And so for context of this process, we have identified the candidate we want to hire. We've interviewed them, and now we need to get them into the payroll system. We need to do their background checks. We need to get their consent for those background checks, things like that. In the old process, the potential employees would come to campus with all of their documents. They would sit down with a business administrator for 45 minutes to an hour, and together they would fill out paperwork. The business administrator would scan documents. They would kind of make a packet of sorts. They would campus mail it over to the HR office, which was in a different building. The HR office would, unpackage them, begin processing them. I know the busy times of the year are August and January when the new semester start. They would have a stack of paper a foot thick on every desk. I don't know how they kept it straight, but they're amazing. Somehow they managed to do that. Documents would be processed in HR before being walked down the hallway to payroll, where they had their own desks full of documents that they were trying to keep straight. The process could take days or even weeks during the busy time of the year. So we had to do something there. I know there were instances of people getting back pay because they just hadn't been processed fast enough. So the new process. The HR director approached me. I was his primary IT support, and he said, I've heard of this product called Laserfiche. I hear they're doing great things. I'd like to take a look at it and see if we can't digitize our onboarding process. I had never heard of it at the time, but I went and used the Google and learned a lot. And I went back and said, yeah, I think we can do this. So we met with all the stakeholders. I think it's important to bring all your stakeholders in the beginning, make sure everyone's going to be happy with your final solution. So we sat down with HR, with payroll, with some of the upper administration, and looked at what they wanted to accomplish with this re-engineering. We did all this actually over the course of about a month. They approached me at the end of June, and they wanted it in August. Timelines, they don't give you very long. And we were able to accomplish it. We finished it around the last week of July and rolled it out, I guess, the second week of August. So in the new process, the same business administrator that was sitting down with the employees now fills out an online form. So they enter the employee's name, their email address, and then other information that the employee might not know, like their AdLock, which is an account where they're paid, and their title, things like that. And the employee hits submit. The potential employee now receives an email that will contain a unique link that they can use to access their onboarding form. Like I said, that link is unique, so when they click that link, it will have their information in the form. We include a copy, a convenience copy, I guess, for the employee of the initial form that was submitted by the business administrator. So they'll get that email. It says, welcome to Texas A&M. They click the link. They're navigated to our onboarding form, which will autofill all of the information that was on the initial form that was submitted by the business administrator. And they will then fill out other information on the form, such as biographical information, any previous names they might have had, like maiden names, things like that, anything we would need to do those background checks. They will consent to those background checks, and they will also upload any supporting documentation like their photo ID or anything else that might be asked for on the form. Mind you, they are able to do this now from the comfort of their home. They're not traveling to campus to sit down for 45 minutes to fill this out with our employees. So we're saving time for our employees and our potential new employees. Like I said, saving time was a priority, and another way we did this was by making the forms dynamic in that they change based on the answers the potential employees give. So for instance, if they say they don't have a driver's license, they don't fill out the section, oh, that's really hard to read, I'm so sorry. They don't fill out the section that asks about questions about driver's license. Similarly, if they didn't go to college, they don't fill out the question that asks, where their college was located or what year they graduated. So they submit their form, and it is saved automatically into HR section of the repository. The folders, using the metadata, the field values, are automatically named, last name, comma, first name, dash, hire date. And all of the documents, including the supporting documents, are put into those folders. Links are created between the documents so that if you ever went back later and opened up the document that was submitted, you could see that there were attachments at the time of submission. Also, a template is applied to the document, and the metadata is filled out automatically with the form value, the field values rather. And this can be used later to be searched upon. So if we wanted to know all the employees hired between certain dates, we can search on that. If we wanted to know all the ones hired on that specific account, we could search for that as well and get all of those results. Access to these fields or these template values can be restricted even down to that metadata field level. So if, for instance, you have social security numbers in there you don't want people to see, restrict that down, and perhaps only the HR director can see that. Also on the template are drop-down fields that are used for the processing and the movement of the document through all the folders. So that top picture is what the student worker that's going to process this would see. It just gives them the option to approve it or send it to the HR director. The workflows take that staff input and move those documents accordingly. So we've got the folder there that says HR director, and I see it because I'm the sysadmin, but everyone else only sees what they have permission to see. So only the HR director and his delegate can see that folder. So if the student worker selects send to HR director, it's routed to that folder. Only he can make that determination. Emails are sent at every step automatically, notifying the employees that they have tasks to complete. And they're also sent to the department at the same time, notifying the department that the potential employee has submitted their documentation. So they're kept up to date with where the person is in the routing. So now we're going to kind of get into the process modelers and the workflows that run these two forms. So just as a reminder, there's two forms working here. The first one was what the business administrator submitted to be emailed to the potential employee, and the second one is the form the potential employee is sending to our HR group. So this is a process modeler for the first form, which is the one that the business administrator sent. It's actually very simple. All it does is save the document to the repository and attach the template that you see on the right. Of note, we're going to save this in a particular location. It's very whited out, but there is a location there that will be important on the next slide. So this is the workflow that's going to run after that document gets saved to the repository. These are the rules that govern when that workflow will run. So we want to make sure that the entry type for that is a document and that it is actually in our repository. There's a number of repositories because we are part of a shared service. I need to make sure I'm only running workflows on my documents. Also, the document has to be at that path, which is the same path that we told it to save it to. We're then going to retrieve the field values from that document because we're going to use them in the email we're going to send to the employee. We're going to find the folder because we want to route it to the completed folder when we're done. And then we're going to create a unique token, which is the unique URL that is going to be emailed out. So what happens with this is we take the values from the initial form and we tell it to populate the next form with those values. So in the next form, if there is the variable department underscore email, we're going to automatically fill that with the value from the first form. So this is what that looks like on that second form. There's the variable department underscore email that will automatically be populated, and we do that for all of the fields on that form. The last step in that is to send out the email. So we take the values from the first form. We get the employee's email address. We also get the email address of the department contact so we can keep them informed of the current state of the process. we attach it's the starting entry, but it's the original submission. That way they get their carbon copy. And we include the unique form URL link there at the bottom. And that's just by inserting that token that we created higher up in the workflow. So now we're going to look at the process modeler for the second form. It's also very simple. It's just going to save to the repository, and then it's going to attach the template with all the metadata, but it's also going to have those drop-down fields that the processing staff can use to route the form. We're going to call this one onboarding form instead of the last name, comma, first name. And to be honest, if I built this again, I would not do it this way, but that's how it worked out a year and a half ago, and so that's actually what it still is today. We'll change that here in a minute, though. So this is the workflow. Can y'all see that all right? It's kind of white. That's okay. So rules, again, are important on your workflows. This one, it makes sure that there is a template applied called HR pre-onboarding. We have the delay at the beginning because delays are important when you are saving documents. I feel they're important when you're saving documents to the repository. I've had instances where workflows try to run before the document fully saves, so that's my way around that, is to put a little delay in the beginning. We're going to retrieve the field values again because we're going to want to work with those. And then we get to this condition decision where we need to make sure that the form we're working with is the onboarding form. So what it looks for is that the form itself is named onboarding form. And if it is, it takes the path that continues on. But if it is different, such as the picture ID, it will terminate it. This is the part I would probably build different, but that's how it ended up working, and it works. We're then going to find all of the folders we need to route this document. So we're going to send it to the HR director. We're going to send it to payroll, but we need workflow to know where those folders are so we can put that document in that folder. So that's what all those find folders do. We're also going to rename that document so it's actually meaningful to the person processing it. It's going to pull that field value and give it that name. We're going to send an email to the department, letting them know that the person has submitted their documents. And you'll notice there's kind of this, it's kind of funky to me, but this funky way that this is built. We ran into a problem about a year ago where our form server wasn't properly communicating with our email server, and we would get errors and it would terminate the workflow. And it was actually at Empower last year that I was speaking to a solutions consultant, and he suggested we do the try catch, which basically says if there's an error, instead of terminating, take this alternate path. So we take the alternate path upon an error, and we tell it to wait 10 minutes and try again. And if it fails again, wait 2 hours and try again. Since we implemented that, we've never had another problem. In fact, we were able to figure out the problem between the two servers talking, and I don't put these in anymore, but for a while it was a great solution that I learned here at Empower. So I think this is a great event to be at because you learn a lot. Continuing on, we will, up here, we're going to wait for the student worker to make a decision on the background check. So basically, the workflow is going to pause and then wait for that drop-down value to change. The only two options are either approved or send to HR director. If they approve it, it follows this path here and skips all of the HR director. But if they send it to the HR director, we're going to email the HR director telling them they have a task to complete. We're going to move it into his folder, and we're going to do another wait for him to take action on that document. He can either terminate it and say, no, this person's not cleared for hire, or he can allow it to continue on in the process. The HR director is the only one in the process that can terminate the potential hires. The student workers cannot do that. We're going to continue on to the degree verification. Same kind of thing. We wait for the student worker to do it. They can route it to the HR director if they need to. It's then going to go on to get a UIN, and that's just a unique identification number for the school. If it's determined that the potential employee needs a temp social security number, we route it to payroll for them to assign one. Of note on this, you'll see a grayed out email there. It's highlighted in red. We learned quickly that there's enough of these that payroll didn't want to see all the emails. But instead of deleting that task, we just disabled it. That way, in case later they came back and said, hey, we want that back, we can just re-enable it. We're not having to rebuild it. So it just skips that. That's done just by right-clicking it, telling it to disable. The next item there checks to make sure that all 3 checkboxes are done before letting it continue. Worth noting is that the student workers don't have to keep opening and closing this form to do the selections. They can process the whole thing at once, and it will just skip all these steps. It's not stuck, okay, do this, wait, do this. It doesn't do that. The next conditional decision we get to is whether or not a temporary Social Security number was needed. A big thing for us was giving the people that needed to know the information the correct information. So the department needs to know if a temporary Social Security number was necessary. So we split the routing path there, and we send different emails based on what happened in the process. If a temp SSN was needed, we send that information in the email. If it wasn't, the email doesn't contain that information. We also have a deadline built in to this, and this was put in for times of the year when we're really busy. The person processing the I-9s might have so many of them that they're not going to come into this and indicate that they've done it. So this individual wanted a way for the process to continue if they didn't take an action. So it waits 30 days, which I don't recommend that, by the way, but they were adamant. So it waits 30 days, and if they haven't taken an action, it just completes the workflow. It moves it to the completed folder, and the process is over. Another process we took on was the continuing education process. This process is used by faculty members who want to teach courses that are outside the standard curriculum of a degree. So they might want to teach a seminar, a symposium, they might hold a conference, but it's not necessarily going to be for the students. It might be for outside industry people, but they have to have approval to teach that class. So that has to be submitted to department heads and deans for approval. So in the old process, very similar to the other one, the faculty member would fill out the paper form, put it on the department head's desk, wait for the approval to happen. It could take a week. Then it would be routed to the dean's office, where a business administrator would determine which dean needed to view the document. Because deans do different things, they're over different sections. It had to go to a specific dean based on the contents of the document. That's time intensive. After the dean approved it, a manual email was typed up letting the faculty member know that they were cleared to begin teaching the class. So we sat down with the dean's office and discussed streamlining this process. Emphasis was placed on timeliness and making sure that we had completed records at the end of this. We re-engineered this over the course of about 2 months, and now the process takes less than a week usually, where before it could take over a month to completely travel around everyone's desk. Similarly, it's an online form like the onboarding. A big part of the success of this form was our integration with our database that contains a list of all of our departments and centers. It also contains the department heads and their administrative assistants' account information. So the person filling out the form will select their department in the drop-down. The form then goes to the database and retrieves the information, the account information of the department head, and pulls that information back and stores it in a hidden field. The field's hidden with JavaScript. And we use that for the routing. In the process modeler, you just select that field and it routes there. What's great about that is we can deploy this into other forms very quickly. We don't have to rebuild this every time. And it allows us to rapidly deploy these forms that involve routing. Also, a great benefit is we don't have to go into each individual form and update the list of departments. All we do is update the database, and all of our forms just automatically have all the new departments. So this is the process modeler. I mentioned that we're kind of using 2 different ways to do approvals. The first one did workflow with templates. This one just uses the process modeler. This is my favorite. After I learned this, I've never made another workflow do approvals. I just do it all here. So the person submits their document. It routes to the business administrator. That's the assistant, I guess, to the department head just for review. They make any revisions they need. They automatically get emails, and this is across the board for the entire approval process, automatic emails that just give them the link that they can use to go to their form for approvals. They click that link and they're routed to their form where they get some information about the form, which is seen around the form itself. They get the exact copy of the form that was submitted, and they get a comments box and buttons for them to submit it for further approval or reject it. On each of these events, we also include an intermediate timer event, which basically reassigns the event to the person after a day. We want to keep reminding them that they've got work to do and we expect them to do it, or they're just going to be bugged every day until they do it. We exclude the weekends because we're not that mean. All right, so the business administrator is going to review it and send it to the department head, who has a very similar setup. When they click their link, they can approve or reject it. But we're to the point now where a decision has to be made on which dean to send it to. Well, Process Modeler can look at the answer to the important question that makes that determination on the form and route it automatically. So if the activity is conducted by TAMU, it routes to the appropriate dean. If it's TEAS, which is the Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station, we're kind of both. It routes to a different dean. Along the same lines, if the project that they're trying to do, the classes are a sponsored project, it has to route to our Sponsored Research Services group, where they will add a account number and an account name. These fields are only shown on the Sponsored Research Services version of the form, and if it doesn't go to SRS, these fields never show up. So they will enter those required fields, they enter that information, and no matter if it was sponsored or not, it saves to the repository and it tells it to run a workflow. And this is a workflow. It's much shorter than the onboarding workflow, and the main purpose is just to send an automated email. So we're going to put our delay in again because I like to do that, and we're going to retrieve those field values. That way we can send that email. Find the starting folders. That way we can route it, and we're going to send our email. So if the email if the project was sponsored, we're going to include that account name and number to be sent back automatically to the departments because they need to know that information. If it wasn't sponsored, we omit that information. They get just the information they need. It's all automated. No one is typing this email up every time. So that's the two processes, kind of doing different things, but both handling approvals in different ways. So we're going to now move on to how we do project selection and how we look at return on investment. So for project selection, for the most part, it's mainly left up to me to decide which projects I want to take on, unless my boss comes to me and says, some dean wants this, let's do it in a week, and then we lose sleep. But we take those on pretty often, actually. And then also, we look at the potential return on investment on a project. We ask the person that's requesting the re-engineered process to determine how much time each submission takes with their old process. Sometimes that takes them a while to come up with, but we like to get them to do that because it gives us a point to compare to after we're done. We then, so we take on those projects based on those two factors. The more likely, we are more likely to take that on rather. We established a value that we use on all of our ROI of $40 an hour. It's kind of an arbitrary number, but it's about the average person's salary per hour plus their benefits. We multiply that by the time saved per form, and that's how we determine our ROI. All of those ROIs are reported to my boss's boss monthly. He sends that up the food chain. He's a very big proponent of showing that IT can save you money and not just spend it, because I think typically people think IT just spends a lot of money. So our best ROI we've ever seen was on our onboarding, which we got the award for this morning. This actually is a little bit of an older screenshot. I think we're over 3,700 new hires in the last year and a half. And we determined that we save 45 minutes per new hire. That's where we get that 2,070 number of hours saved. It's actually close to 2,700 now, which is over a year of time savings and a soft dollar time savings of over $100,000. The total investment in this process was between $5,000 and $10,000 in licensing and time. So, looking forward, we've begun to train our staff to digitize their own business processes. I truly believe that this product is easy enough that anyone can pick it up and make great things with it. I have a couple people in here that have made forms and they're very successful with it. Usually this involves sitting down with the person that's requesting it one-on-one. We work through the first business process they want to re-engineer, a little more hand-holding, but we've learned that after that first one, the second one, they don't ask as many questions, and eventually we get to the point where they're able to do this with minimal help. Maybe they have technical questions, but for the most part, they're able to do this on their own. We also identify what I call superstars in the departments that are, they pick this up very quickly. And we ask them to share that knowledge with their coworkers. That way we're able to teach more people without necessarily having to be so hands-on. We've seen great results with that, and it's also begun to change the culture there in the college. I get people now that come to me that hadn't considered their forms in 10 years and say, hey, is this even possible? Can we do this? And that allows us to see further increases in efficiency and further time and cost savings. And so with that, I will take any questions you might have. Yes?
Two questions. One, on the onboarding process, what documents do you allow them to attach to the applicant?
So we typically ask for excuse me. Yes, sorry. The question was, what documents do we allow them to attach on the onboarding form? So the only two that we ask for are photo identification and social security card.
Not the I-9, anything like that?
No, that is handled with a different application.
Yeah. And they also send off the approval, sign off on the approval for background?
Yes, so we handle it with just check boxes that by submitting this form, you agree to allow us to run background checks on you.
The other question was, you're saying end users are teaching them how to create their own forms, is that correct?
Correct, yes, absolutely. So I'm the administrator of all the forms, and so what that looks like, at least in our shop, is they email our support desk and request a new form. I create the form, I assign them rights to edit it, and they're free to create their stuff.
Is this form just something they think it's not tied to a workflow, or is it just?
Correct. So we currently do not allow our users to create workflows. But the process modeler, I feel, is easy enough that I trust them to be able to use it. They have to use their own credentials to save into the repository, so I know they're not getting access to anything they shouldn't. And yeah, they're able to do it without issue. I've heard some people, they get really big eyes when I tell them I allow my users to create forms. But I believe that if I don't allow them to, they'll go make a Google form that I can't see and I have no idea they did it. So at least this way I can see all the forms, I know what's there, and I can monitor them if necessary. Yes? Yeah, so if you go into have you ever seen Laserfiche Forms? Have you ever used it?
No, not Forms.
Okay, so Forms is... Okay, so the question was, where is the process modeler in Forms, right? So that is located, Forms is completely web-based. It's available anywhere you're at. I don't think I have internet, but if I did, I could go to my Forms webpage. And on there, when you select the form you want to edit, the very first page you're brought to is the process modeler. And it's very easy. It's drag and drop. You drag and then basically connect with lines, and it follows that path. But yeah, it's just one of the pages on that. Yeah, in the back. Yes. So do you need the spiel on the $40, or you're good with the 40?
That was an average.
Yeah, it's just the average of the salary and benefits package. So we take that and we multiply that by the time savings per submission of the form. We then subtract out the cost of building the form and whatever time and whatever licenses were necessary to get that return on that investment. And that return goes up as you do more and more because you don't need more licenses every time you build a new form. They already have it. They can use the same license for multiple processes.
Started to think about change management of the information collected initially in the onboarding process, like if an employee has to change his address or phone number or something like that?
That is the question is if we put any thought into if the employee has a change of address or anything like that. That is not a process we've tackled. I believe that's handled by another system that's already in place. We typically tackle the ones that are currently paper-based. And I think that was handled by the payroll system. Yeah, right here.
Are you doing anything where you read the operating system, the Windows user, into the form?
The question was, are we reading the operating system of the submitter of the form? No, we are not. What do you do with that?
Well, I was just wondering, like, if you have an anonymous form that's not using an authenticated Laserfiche participant, if you could perhaps read the OS user so you can still know who the submitter was of the form,
We are not doing that, but what we have done is we built a method of authentication for anyone with a Texas A&M ID. So even though they're submitting them anonymously, we can put their net ID, which is their.
You look it up?
We look it up through a database and we bring it back to the form and we put it in an uneditable field. We do that. We use that a lot for student submitted forms because we're not going to buy licenses. I mean, we would love to buy licenses if anyone here. We'd like a bulk discount for all of our students. But right now we're not going to buy 15,000 licenses for our students. So that's how we can kind of authenticate which students are submitting forms.
Are you using this for manual trade employees or not?
The question was, am I using this for manual trade employees?
Groundskeepers, custodians?
No, so at least at Texas A&M, that's all been outsourced. These are only for the employees of the College of Engineering. I know you've had your hand up a long time, sorry. One more time, sorry. In Forms 10? So I believe the question was, have I looked at the Teams feature in Forms 10? Okay. I learned about that yesterday, and I'm extremely excited. I don't have my hands on that yet. We're still on Forms 9.2? Yeah, we're on Forms 9.2. I am very eager. I'll have an email out to our shared service today, probably Judith, asking for Forms 10 because I am very excited. In the black, yes.
You mentioned that one of the documents that's uploaded is a social security card.
Yes.
Can you tell me how are you keeping that information in that document secure, and also how are you conveying that information to applicants?
In the email that goes out to them, we're telling them that we are storing it securely. And then it is basically just put in a folder that no one has access to other than the HR director, based on the security rights of that folder. That was asking how we handle the social security card.
You haven't had any kickback?
No, not so far. Maybe we will now.
Does A&M plan to use Laserfiche beyond your department?
Yes, I think almost. The question was, does Texas A&M plan to use Laserfiche beyond my department? I believe most of the departments have some sort of presence, Judith, wouldn't you say?
So the shared service, if I may answer
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
Shared service is available to any entity that's part of the Texas A&M University system. It's offered as a shared service, and so they can elect to use it and contact the central IT if they want to use it.
Yeah.
So they themselves will be their own administrators of Laserfiche?
Yeah, so I believe they require that each department have a local administrator to handle the local users, and that's me in engineering. In the back.
I'm just curious how you handle testing of previous workflows when you upgrade to a new version of Laserfiche. Is that an IT job, or is that kind of pushed off to the users?
So typically, the question was how we handle when there's updates made to like the workflow server and stuff like that. How we test that. So the centralized IT office will basically spin up a test version of. It's an exact copy of the current live version. I go into my workflows and I run them all and I make sure they run. I just do testing usually in the middle of the night. It makes for a long night, but I test all my workflows and I report back to them that they work. Yes, Judith?
So if I may add, we try to employ a pretty rigorous change management system so that we are communicating to our end users, anticipating changes. We often work with groups like engineering and others who don't have a lot of processes that are running and pre-testing before we even announce to our general consumers that we plan to do the upgrade. And then we have a time period that we say, we plan to do this on such and such a date. We have the test environment available for you. If you see any issues, get back to the team ASAP so we can address them before we run them out.
Yeah, so we currently have, I think, 70-ish live forms. All of them, I think, run some form of a workflow. We've only ever had, I think, one issue, and they were extremely responsive. We got it fixed in a matter of hours. It's never really been an issue.
Forms are rather agnostic. You could be a Mac college or a PC college, and it wouldn't really matter.
Absolutely, because it's all online.
Right. But when you're processing it, are they processing on a PC? Are they processing these applications, or the HR onboarding? Things
Sure.
like that, on a PC or a Mac?
So all of our HR office uses, they use PCs currently.
Okay.
But I believe you could do all of this. I'm looking at some of the Laserfiche people. I believe you could do all of this on web access. You could, yeah, even if you're on a Mac.
It's a better look now.
Yeah, yeah, and that should look better now with 10, which I just learned about yesterday too.
Right.
Anybody else? Well, all right, I think you. Oh, wait, one more. Go ahead.
Before you decide to choose Laserfiche, have you considered other software?
Yeah, so the question was, did we consider any other softwares before we got Laserfiche? So I believe a committee was formed around 4 years ago to look at, oh, it's 2009, oh, longer than that, 6 years ago, to determine what would be the recommended document management system for the Texas A&M system. I've only been here the 3 years. I was not a part of that, so I don't know what other software solutions were looked at. I just know that Laserfiche was chosen and made available to all the colleges within the system. All right, thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.